The black cats got Dave N. The white cats, they got Doug. The Google search engine has...
Welcome to another edition of our Jim and Ann show.
Yay! So today we're gonna go back to the basics. How search engines crawl and find web pages and then rank them. So maybe we'll go basic and then really advanced. We'll go basic and advanced.
Yeah, let's start with the basics.
We're gonna skip the middle. We're just gonna go basic to advanced.
There's no middle.
No middle.
So first of all, how do they find the websites, the URLs?
Where do I
How
submit
do
my
they
URL to
discover-
Google?
Yeah, and I did that years ago. Why am I still not ranking? That's a very common question that we got in our search ad community. And there's always like a tough to explain because it's so basic that you don't know really to where to start. Like that's not how it works.
Google's just God. They're aware of everything.
Yeah. So how do they discover URLs? They crawl the links, right?
They do. Not
That's
physically,
what they do.
but... So yeah,
Focus.
So Google has these computers, and they're like going from link to link to link to link to link to link to link on the internet, and all that they're doing is just following links. And when Google follows links, they find new ones, they put them into the index, and they're not just grabbing the URL, but they're going to every page they find, and they're taking what's called a cache snapshot of the page, which means like they're actually like saving a copy of the page and putting it on their computers, and they're grading the pages as well. So like every page that Google finds has a lot of different gradings on a lot of different scales based on things like, what are the words that are on this page, and what are the words that are in important places on this page, like the title tag or in heading tags, and then they're saying like, well, and what are words used to link to this particular page, because that must help describe the page, and then they say things like, let's say that they're crawling through a website and it's a 1,000-page website, and they look at any one of the individual pages on that website and they say, well, how important is this page? And part of the importance is, well, if it's a 1,000-page website, how many of those 1,000 pages link to that particular page? If it's like a site-wide link, that's probably really important. If the only way you can reach this link is go down 5 levels on the website and then there's only one page that links into that page, that's probably not a very important page. And so Google's given it some scores on that. They're also, when they record the page, they're looking at things in the future as well. They're looking at how do users interact with that page. So kind of they grab this snapshot of the page, and they grab all the code of the page and all the words and all the placements, and that's part of the score. And how important is that page? And I guess we should talk about links as well. We talked about how many levels down like is that page, and how many internal other pages of that website link to that page. And then they also say, are there other websites on the web that link to that page? And if so, what are those pages about? How trusted are those pages? And they're looking at, the kind of a link map of how important that page may be. And then on another level, they're looking at the users. What do users do when they reach that page? And Google knows a lot of these things through, they own the Chrome browser, so they're able to tell an awful lot, and to be able to get samples. So they're looking at things like, does someone just go to that page for a second and then go back to Google? Because they look at it and go, what is this? And they go back to Google, that's a bad signal. Or they look at, how much time do people spend on that page compared to other pages that rank for that phrase, and do people actually scroll down on the page, and what do people do when they're done with that page? Do they go back to Google to that same search and click on someone else because that's bad? Or when they're done with a page, do they go off to Twitter, Facebook, or some other website, and it tells Google that it looks like people probably found what they were looking for on that page. There's just all sorts of numbers and evaluations and scores that Google is giving to every single URL that it finds. And so a lot of people are, they're like, I guess to go to the original question, I don't know if there's the original question, but my original joke, like, where do I submit my URL to Google? And it's really, Google's incredibly good at spidering the web and following links. And if you have some page that Google hasn't found, it must be because it's so far buried within your website, and so few interlinked pages are going to it that Google just hasn't discovered it. And you can submit it to Google, or you actually can submit a URL to Google. It's one at a time, and you got to be logged into your Google Webmaster Console, and you can be like, here's a URL, you missed it, Google. And Google will take it and say, all right, we're going to add it to our index, but it's not going to rank for anything. Its value is 0, maybe even less than 0. They're going to be like, no outside people link to that page, hardly anyone on even your own site links to this page, or we would have found it already by now. And it's basically, there's no value in it. So you can submit a URL to Google, but if you have to go to the depths of submitting your URL to Google,
you're doing something wrong.
Yeah, the Google doesn't care about that URL anyways.
Yeah, so if your URL hasn't been discovered by Google, or hasn't been indexed or cached by Google, that's a huge symptom of something going wrong with your website. So searching for the way to submit that URL to Google is the wrong direction. You should be looking at your website and why it's not being crawled as well as it's supposed to, because Google discovers the URLs within hours. Like on a good, well-crawled website, you publish an article and in an hour it's already cached by Google. It's so fast. So there is you can give it your sitemap, you can submit your URL. It's not as helpful as having a well-crawled, often visited, often updated, useful website that has references from outside of the world.
Yeah.
So that's something to keep in mind. So your URL is discovered naturally. There is no way to help it other than having a good, well-crawled, and well-referenced website. And a good content too. Google looks at how much unique content you have. That's a huge thing. You need to have unique, in-depth content. And the recent thing is that they're also checking which related concepts you're mentioning on your website. So they have the whole algorithm to understand how in-depth and valuable your content is beyond even backlinks. Like, do you mention what people tend to, what this topic is associated with? Do you reference others? Do you give people more answers by giving them useful links? How often, how old this article is? They have all those dates and stuff like that. So all sorts of signals. And the answer is really only one: provide good content.
Yeah, and then even if you have all those items right, if users don't interact with your pages good, you're not gonna rank either. So you have to take care of the users that come to the web page first. Like, you got to serve the user intent. Whatever people might be searching for to find that page, you better have a good answer to give them. Ideally, a better answer than anyone else in the top 10, so that your user signals are good as well. I guess there's also the differences between Google crawling pages and ranking pages. And, getting it crawled really shouldn't be an issue. If your pages aren't getting crawled, you either have an issue with your robot text or something in your programming, or you just have stuff that's so deep and buried within your website that it doesn't matter anyways. But I guess then there's when Google crawls, we talked about there's several aspects of scores that they're giving to your site based on many items: the content, the trust, the links, the interlinks, the usability.
How do you know if your URL is crawled or not?
There's a couple ways. You can go to Google search box and type in cache, C-A-C-H-E, colon, and then just drop in the URL and hit enter. You should see the cache. Sometimes if you take off the HTTP and www, that works. And in other ways, you can do NURL colon, so INURL colon, and drop in the URL. Again, I usually leave off the HTTP and www. When you
Google Webmaster Tools have the crawl rate and stuff, and the statistics of if Google had any problems accessing any of your websites, and you can see how many pages it actually crawled and when. So that's a useful data if you haven't registered for Webmaster Tools. Probably do that as soon as possible. That's a good way to understand how deep your site is crawled and how often Google really comes to visit.
How deep is your site? Do 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 do. You know, your site shouldn't be too deep. You shouldn't have too many pages. Because too many pages, you're going to run into problems with things like Google's not indexing them. That probably is a good sign that you have too many pages on your website. Make your site thinner and not as many levels deep. You know, the old days was
not thinner, flatter.
Oh yeah, thank you.
Thinner is like
what flatter. Yes. But yeah, not, the old way years ago, you wanted to create as many pages as possible. The more pages that you had, the more rankings you could have. And then Google decided they don't like sites that are too big and have too much low quality content, so to speak. If you're trying to have a site that's 100,000 pages, they're not all going to be handwritten. It's going to be somehow database driven or spun or whatever, and Google doesn't like that stuff anymore. So really, it's how few pages can you have on your website, and each page will be more powerful. And if you have too many pages, in one sense, it doesn't matter. Google's not going to rank that stuff for anything. And if you go overboard in the number of pages, you can be penalized by an update called the Panda. So you shouldn't have a problem getting your site indexed. If you do, then you get a problem bigger than Google.
Yeah, the solution is bigger than just providing the URL to Google. Google is really fast and smart about discovering content. And there are all sorts of discovery. I know that there have been tests that if the URL is just tweeted, it goes to Google index like momentarily. Or if you just go, of course, Google Plus is also for discovery, is a good way. Even if that's a no-follow link, it's still discovered. So Google has so many ways to discover the pages beyond just crawling the links. They use all sorts of things, everything they can, because obviously that's how up to date and good they are. It depends on how fast they are at discovering good content. So basically, it shouldn't be the problem to get discovered by Google. If you do have that problem, that's something to seriously look at. Where would you start if you think that your URLs are not
I would start looking at the robot text. So I'd go to yoursite.com/robots.txt, and that's where people often block pages.
Sometimes they are default. Like I've seen so many WordPress sites that have that under construction mode, and then they forget to disable it, and they launch their websites blocked for months without realizing that Google cannot even access the site.
Yeah, that often happens. So often people are blocking something in the robot text that's stopping Google from indexing it. And then when I look at the code of pages, so I'd look at the HTML code. So I'd go to a page, I'd right-click, view the source code, and look up in the top section between the head tags and see if there's anything in there that could be stopping. For example, no index, no follow as part of the code. I'd be like, oh, this is stopping the page from getting indexed.
Yeah, and we have a few tools, the free tools at iSearchAd, tools.iSearchAd.com, that do those, show you what Google sees on your page, like crawler simulator, and they will show you red flags if there are anything stopping Google from visiting your website. So probably good.
Yeah. Also on the tool page, I also would run the the tool for the sitemap creator, find broken links. It's kind of a big long tool that says sitemap creator, find broken links, something else, something else. But what it basically is, it's a crawler, and it will crawl your website, and it'll run a header check on all the pages, basically seeing if there's errors. But the next thing I do, I'd crawl the site myself and see, like, am I running into issues with what I'm using. In fact, that particular crawler that we have, if you go into the advanced area, you can set the spider to run as Googlebot, so it'll return just what Google would grab as well. And I'd look to see if there's errors in there. I'd go into the Webmaster Tools. I'm at Webmaster Console now. Go into there, see if there's any errors or messages in there. And then I guess if there were any particular pages, I'd be like, well, how deep in the site are these pages that aren't getting indexed, and what's linked to those, and how well interlinked. But I'd bet that if I went through all those steps, I'd figure out why something wasn't getting indexed.
I would also go, when I start any page, when I ask to analyze any page, I always check text-only Google cache of that page, because it gives lots of ideas. Hey, Google cannot even see those links, and I thought those are links to those pages. So
that's a very important one. So if you want to see how Google really sees any of your specific pages, go to the Google search box and you type in cache, C-A-C-H-E : and then drop in the URL. And when you hit enter, you'll come to a page that looks like your web page, but on the very top there'll be a bar across the top, and in that bar it'll say, here's when Google last saw your page, and here's the date of when we saw it, and there's going to be two other links. One's like the cached version of the page, and the other is the text-only version. So it'll be like two links that are next to each other, like cache version and text-only version. You want to click on the text-only version. Click on that and then look at, here's what Google actually indexed for text on your web page. Because we've seen people where it's like their whole top nav bar is in a JavaScript that Google can't even read. And you don't see it when you look at the regular cache version. You see it all, but when you go to the text-only version, that's like exactly the words and links that Google sees. And suddenly we pull that up and we're like, oh my God, your whole top navigation bar that links to everything isn't even readable by Google. So you want to look over that text-only cache version, compare it to your site, and be like, are all the words that are on here on here?
Yeah, and there is also a good GreaseMonkey script that allows you to actually browse the cache. It's called Google Cache Redux or something. I will link to everything in the description.
REDUX?
Yes, and it adds the links to, when you go to that, what Jim just described, when you first go to the text-only version, every link that Google can have there will be a small link like go to cache, so you can click and go to the cache of that page. Like,
that's pretty cool.
Yeah, so you can just browse your website within Google Cache, and unless you come up with pages that, hey, there is no cache of that pages, let's see why. So that's a good exercise to analyze if there are any errors or anything wrong with any pages or any links of your website.
Well, this brings up a bigger question, which is, how do you know that Google really doesn't have one of your pages indexed? Now, the cache URL doesn't always work. The NURL search command doesn't always work. Now you can go to Google and do like site : and then like yoursite.com. So I could like go to Google and be like site : internetmarketingninjas.com. And if I ran that search, like Google would probably, if I had my results for 100 per page and I scroll down to the bottom of the first page, it may say something like 1 through 7. Google will stop at 10. They stop at 1,000 results. So if you do like a site : command, it's going to be like, here's 1,000 pages. You can't get result 1001. Now, if I run a search for like site : internet marketing ninjas, I might see like, gee, there's only 1 through 7. And gee, there's only 700 pages, but I thought I had 2,000 pages. And you go to the bottom of page 7, and usually after the last result, you'll see a link that says, click here to see the omitted results. So you can click on that, and then go back down to the bottom, and you might be able to click on page 10. The omitted results really aren't, how do I say, I wouldn't worry about those and think that those are subpar pages, because your search that you actually ran, Google says, well, here's 700 results. You should find what you're looking for in this. They're not going to show you those other ones, because who needs 701 results about a site colon command? So don't worry about those that don't show. It's not as if those are subpar. But what will happen is, all right, you get to the end, and you're like, all right, well, there's 1,000 of my pages. Is this page still indexed? So what I would probably do is do like a site colon your site, so like internetmarketingninjas.com space, and let's say if I was wondering about, we did a blog post and I haven't seen it in Google, and the blog post was about internet marketing for coffee or something. So I might search Google for site colon internetmarketingninjas.com space internet marketing for coffee. Is that page showing in the search results? Now, I don't think I'll get into the supplemental talk. That's too advanced. But just keep in mind that even if Google has a page indexed, the score of that page could still be 0. So even if they have something indexed, that doesn't necessarily mean that it's going to rank. And you can try and force Google to index pages, and you can do things to get Google indexing them, but it's like, what's 5 times 0? It's still 0. So really, instead of focusing on what are the pages that aren't indexed, unless there's important ones, and if they're important, then they should be better interlinked within your site, probably is your solution there. But I wouldn't spend time worrying about, those deep pages aren't indexed. I'd spend more time being like, well, let's beef up our current pages that are indexed and make them a little bit better, and maybe we don't need those other pages. Maybe we can canonical them, or stop them from getting indexed, or put all of them on one page instead of 10 pages. And how can I make my site smaller? Because if something's not getting indexed, your site's probably too big and it's too deep and not very well interlinked. And if you spent the time to focus on those pages that actually did rank and were bringing you in traffic, because again, you can put all your effort into a 0 page, but it's still 0.
So the bottom line is it's not about how many pages are crawled, it's about how many of them rank.
That's right. That's right.
So that's what you need to be focusing on. It's not like if you have 1 million pages crawled by Google that your site is in any way better in its eyes than a site with 10 pages, but a really, really, really useful website that has references that users love when they come to it, the website that get interactions and social media shares and stuff like that.
Because actually what will happen is, like, let's say that I had a 10-page website. Google's like, all right, good. These 10 pages all have signals. They're getting links. They have good content, and maybe I put some ads on there, and I'm like, ooh, I'm making $100 a month with these 10 pages. What if I had 1,000 pages? I'd make a lot of money. And so, I produce a whole bunch of pages, and suddenly they're ranking good, because Google's like, we trust Jim. We trust this site. It's had good signals, 1,000 pages, all right. And they might even rank them, and then after a short amount of time, they're going to be like, all these usability signals and all these other signals are really bad. And so now these new pages all have a score of -10 each. And so what it does is it's like, now all those other pages have a negative score, and everything that links to it is dragged down as well. And so your 10 good pages that Google once thought were good, suddenly they don't think they're as good, because they linked all this junk that has this negative value. And so adding more pages to your site, and years ago it was a great thing. Keep adding to your site, more pages, more phrases, more rankings, more Google traffic. And now it's like, if Google finds a bunch of stuff that they don't like, maybe their first attempt was, we're not going to index it. And then you're like, force it, take it. And suddenly Google's like, all right, we've taken it all, and there's so much junk in here that, not only is it not going to rank, but your 10 good pages aren't going to rank the way they used to either, because you've added this junk to your site. So don't do that.
And thank you for watching us, and see you next week for our next show.
Yay! So today we're gonna talk about, what would you like to talk about, Anne?
Well, I was planning to talk about blog post promotion.
Oh, awesome.
Yeah, because that's what I do, and many people are not doing that.
So you can't just write a blog post and have it go viral?
No.
You gotta promote that
Yeah.
blog post?
Can you imagine that? That's actually, when I publish a blog post, it takes me another 40 to 60 minutes to promote it.
Have you promoted?